Sandman.
Greetings, friends. There's not much time left until the most mystical holiday of the year, Halloween, arrives. But how many of you know the origin of this holiday? Where did it come from? Why is the pumpkin the main symbol of Halloween? In this video, I will try to answer all the questions and tell you the history of the origin of this amazing holiday. In the deep autumn forests, when the leaves burn bright and the air grows crisp, the veil between worlds grows thin. The spirits walk among us, unseen by day but glimpsed in the gloaming, shadows that flit silent between the trees, voices that whisper on the wind. The unseen folk have many names, the fair folk, the good neighbors, the wee people, but on the sacred Samhain night, All Hallows Eve, we simply call them kin. For at the dying of the year, as the harvest draws to a close and the wheel of seasons turns, the line between life and death blurs. On this night we honor those who came before by welcoming their spirits back to the hearths they knew in life. We set extra places at our tables, we leave offerings at crossroads and boundary stones, and as dusk falls we light bonfires to guide them home. Their world and ours intertwine, past, present and future entwine, the living and dead reunite. Samhain is the third and final harvest, when livestock and crops are gathered in for the winter. It marks the Celtic New Year and the end of the light half of the year. The crops have been harvested, leaves drop from the trees, and the land quietens and begins its long sleep until spring. The goddess turns into her crone aspect and winter sets in as she mourns the god's death. Samhain celebrates endings and beginnings, and is a time to honor and say farewell to the dying year. The ancient origins of Halloween lie deep in Ireland's cultural history. Samhain was one of the four seasonal festivals of the ancient Celts, the early inhabitants of Ireland, Scotland, and northern France. Occurring halfway between the autumn equinox and winter solstice, Samhain marked the beginning of the darker half of the year. For the Celtics, Samhain was a time of communion with the spiritual world, both celebratory and reverential. The thinning of the veil allowed for communication between the living and the dead, the mortal realm and the otherworld. Bonfires were lit to ward off unwelcome spirits, but the hearth fire was also a beacon guiding loved ones home. Stories would be told of ancestors and heroes, celebrating their deeds and wisdom. Offerings of food and wine were left for the unseen ones who watched and walked alongside the living. When the Romans invaded the Celtic lands around 43 CE, they brought with them their own festivals and traditions. The Roman festivals of Feralia, occurring in late October, and Pomona, honoring the goddess of fruit and trees, likely influenced what we now call Halloween. As Christianity spread, the Catholic Church sought to supplant pagan holidays with Christianized versions, and Pope Gregory III moved the official Festival of the Martyrs, later All Saints' Day, from May 13th to November 1st to align with existing local traditions. In the 8th century, the Catholic Church established All Hallows Eve on October 31st, followed by All Saints' Day on November 1st. The evening became known as a night of both festivity and veneration of dead saints and martyrs. The shared date and liminal nature of the pagan and Christian holidays ensured the customs carried on, adapted over time to align with doctrine. As European immigrants came to America, the traditions of Samhain traveled with them. Celebrations were held amongst immigrant communities to honor the dead and invite friendly spirits. The timing aligned with the end of harvest season, and celebrations included playful pranks and fortune-telling games. Neighbors would gather for feasting and dancing around bonfires. Over time, Halloween in America evolved into a more community and child-centered holiday. The pranks and hijinks became candy-fueled trick-or-treating, and costumes allowed for harmless mischief and make-believe. Decorations began to appear as the 20th century brought commercially produced costumes, treats and decor. While the religious and mystical origins remained as undercurrents, Halloween came to be seen as an occasion for neighborhood parties and fun. Common symbols and traditions of Halloween such as costumes, jack-o'-lanterns, and haunted houses trace back to early Celtic and medieval practices surrounding Samhain. Costumes and masks enabled people to disguise themselves as spirits and travel safely between worlds. As All Hallows Eve traditions were brought to America, costumes allowed celebrants to playfully mimic supernatural creatures and departed souls. Today, Halloween costumes let children become characters of imagination, fantasy, or spooky lore. Jack-o'-lanterns evolved from the Celtic practice of carving menacing faces into turnips and placing them in windows to frighten away spirits. When Irish immigrants came to America, they discovered the pumpkins native to the Americas were much better suited for carving. Pumpkins have become an iconic part of modern Halloween celebrations. The Druids were said to have divined fortunes and made prophecies during Samhain rituals. Various forms of fortune-telling and divination later became part of All Hallows' Eve, such as peering into mirrors in darkened rooms to catch a vision of one's future spouse. Bobbing for apples was another game used for fortune-telling. The ancient Celts believed bonfires warded off roaming evil spirits around Samhain. When supernatural beings were thought to be active on All Hallows' Eve, candles inside hollowed-out gourds or turnips were used to light one's way outdoors and keep mischievous spirits at bay. Lit jack-o'-lanterns bearing scary faces took on a similar role in lore. In medieval times, tales of encounters with fairies, witches, goblins, and demons increased around Samhain as the veil lifted. Spooky stories about haunted houses, ghostly graveyards, and things lurking in the shadows became part of the All Hallows' Eve tradition. Foods like apples, nuts, and root vegetables were part of Samhain and later All Hallows as harvest fare and offerings for roaming spirits. Apples bobbed for divination, nuts like hazelnuts or chestnuts were roasted and eaten, and turnips were carved into early jack-o'-lanterns. Other foods now connected with Halloween such as candy corn and toffee apples came later. Many aspects of Samhain survived through the ages to shape modern Halloween traditions. Honoring the dead, fortune-telling rituals, costumes, jack-o'-lanterns, and spooky stories are all ways we continue ancient practices. While Halloween has become commercialized and more novelty-focused, its roots remain firmly planted in the old Celtic spirit world. The significance of Samhain and later All Hallows' Eve has not been forgotten, even as trick-or-treating and haunted houses have dominated public celebrations. For those who wish to honor the deeper meaning, the original spirit still imbues the night. On October 31st, as the hours grow late and shadows lengthen, many still light candles or bonfires in observance of old rituals. Offerings are left on doorsteps and at crossroads, not to appease ghosts but to welcome loved ones home. Stories are told of treasured memories and lessons passed down, keeping alive what came before. The veil thins, and for a moment past and present merge. We feel the thread that connects us to those we have lost but who, in spirit if not body, join us once more. Halloween holds traces of mystical beliefs, folk customs, and ancient practices to honor the beloved dead. Its modern festivities and family traditions keep echoes of a time when living in spirit worlds drew near. We still celebrate on Samhain night as our ancestors did, donning costumes, gathering around fires, preparing a feast and welcoming back those who have left this world but not our hearts. The old bone-deep magic remains.